Hi, welcome back. So the sound didn't complete on the first recording, so I'm just going to finish off where I left off. Maybe I can be a bit more detailed and a bit fresher, right, because it was the end of a long recording. So I was just having trouble with my relationship, and I just got sober. So I managed to put my foot down to tell my partner that this is it this time. I need to get sober. So I did it. I just did it. I just went and did it. And it was after her birthday where I invited a lot of my friends that now sort of, in turn have become her friends. And we had a big party and I got really high. We had a big party in the park near where we were living, and I had a big panic attack of paranoia, which I get because I'd stayed up all night the night before on my own, because that's what happens once I start. And then saw 40 of my friends in the park for her birthday and started completely freaking out, and by about 3 p.m. I was an absolute wreck. This would frequently happen to me throughout my entire life due to, if I'm completely honest, excessive cocaine consumption and lack of sleep. So that was the wake up, that was the time. It still took me 2 months to quit completely, but I knew that was the last time. I knew, I was like, this is just ridiculous now. I just can't continue like this. So I had a few little drinky nights throughout the next 2 months, and then I was like, okay, that's it now, done. And I managed to just stop. So I guess that was around about June. So in fact, we're in June now, so that's 2 years. Can't remember the exact date. I should have remembered the date. So this last year, so I got sober and I had this, what I believed to be optimized diet. I was cold plunging every morning. We had a nice big, one of those freestanding baths there, and I'd fill that up with as much ice as I could every morning and jump in that. And that was the saviour of my day, really, because you definitely get this sort of 2 hours or so of slow release dopamine is very noticeable. It definitely picks your mood up. So I got into that habit. I kept that habit, and I was working out. I was lifting three times a week, probably sprinting twice. So I do hill sprints. Lots of hills in my town. I'm living on a hill now. And meditating, journaling, all the things, all the stuff. I've got my red light mat, which is grounded, which I would lie on in the evenings. I can meditate on in the mornings. And I didn't feel like there was much else I could do. And I think it was just coming to terms with what I'd done to myself for my entire life and who I actually was. A combination of the two. Now I'm not running and hiding from myself anymore. I have to face who I am. So this year was very tough. It was the toughest year of my life. It was, as I say, I always just used alcohol and drugs to combat any negative thoughts I would have, and it would always work. It would just be 2 drinks and then carry on, and then everything's forgotten until the next day. or the day after that, and then find the easiest way to escape again and go back into the cycle. So I was in Brighton, and it was very hard to find jobs in pastry here. I ended up getting a part-time job in an online cake shop, and I baked sponges and washed up. Very different to what I'd been doing from making afternoon tea in the Ritz about 6 months ago in the Berkeley. So I don't suppose that helped, but a job's a job. At least it takes your mind off things. I remember openly bursting into tears probably 5 times throughout this job while I was there. I went to the doctor to talk about medication, but I just really didn't want to do it because I'd been down this rabbit hole of functional medicine. I knew there's a better answer. So I did my ADHD test. As I think I mentioned, I scored highly on the autism spectrum. Now the waiting list in the NHS is 2 years or something like that, which I'm on, which has been, well, I mean, if you want to pay, it's pretty, I think it's about £3,000, and it's a lot of money just for a diagnosis. So it kind of makes sense to me. Neurodivergence. Some of my very intuitive friends have mentioned that you probably are somewhere on the spectrum before I even got the diagnosis. So this year was tough. It was very tough. And I found navigating a relationship very difficult when you've got to really try to focus on yourself, to keep yourself up without bringing someone else down. I just felt guilty all the time. Just didn't feel good enough. So it came to the following year, January. My partner and I had always spent we didn't spend any time. She only went away once without me, skiing with her friend for a couple of days, for 5 days or something. And we just seemed to live in each other's pocket, which I don't think helped. And working part-time meant I was at home more. So she finally went to Thailand alone because she had to sort out work there and see her parents. And I stayed home. We spoke on the phone fairly regularly, and one time it just all got a bit too much for me. She was always changing her mind about things, and we had a big argument on the phone, and she kind of got the message that I was really stressed out about this and just left me alone for 2 weeks. Left me alone for 2 weeks, but then suddenly appeared at the doorstep 2 weeks before she was meant to come back. And I was not ready for this. I just had these 2 weeks of silence and real time to myself. And I just needed more. I just needed more of that. And there was a massive argument. I left the house and ended up going to meet a friend and got very, very high and drunk. So that was my one slip up in my time of sobriety. She did understand how stressed out I was, and she'd actually just left her bags in London because she'd just popped in. And so she went back, and I went back to the house and got all my stuff. Had a couple of days to do that, and that was that. Then I took everything to my mum's house, and I then stayed with my mum for what ended up to be an entire year, because we had a disagreement about the rent on the house, and I was tied into a contract and I had to pay it. And there was nothing I could do. Even the landlord said I had to, and I checked all the law, and it turns out that is the case, unless I wanted to just not pay it and risk being sued. So I stayed at my mum's for a whole year last year. So I had been thinking more about carnivore recently. I'd been listening to a bit more podcasts when I was at home and when I had that time alone. And now I finally had my own space, my own freedom. I did more and more research for about a month, and then I just suddenly went, right, I'm going to do it, and bit the bullet. So I ate breakfast with my last piece of sourdough on a Sunday morning. It was very meat heavy, sausages and all sorts of things, and eggs. And then I had completely animal-based dinner Sunday evening. And then I just committed from Monday. I kept in mustard, black pepper, and I made a kind of tomato sauce out of organic double tomato concentrate, which is obviously sieved of the seeds, sieved of the skins, and double cooked, which means the lectins are dramatically reduced. And I made that with allulose and apple cider vinegar. And that was my sauce to eat all this extremely fatty meat with for the next 2 days. So anyway, even with keeping this little condiment in, I had completely animal-based diet on Monday with my little ketchup, my homemade ketchup and mustard. And I felt fine. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I seemed to be hungry, and I ate a lot of food. And it wasn't until the next day that I woke up and I felt like a completely different person. Completely different. Like everything was just lifted. The fog was lifted. The depressive thoughts, even the inflammation in my body, it was very dramatically, noticeably different. I went to go and jump in the sea at 6 a.m. My mum's house is fairly close to the sea. And I very clearly remember walking along there, and it felt like I was almost not touching the ground, like I was levitating. And it's just an unforgettable experience. So I went to go and jump in the sea. I actually got my camera out and recorded myself because I felt so strongly about how powerful this was. I mean, I cried in the camera. I actually posted it on Instagram a year later, something I thought I would never do, but and it got quite a lot of shares when it went a bit semi-viral, that one. So I then went back home, and for the next week continued with an extremely an extremely serious appetite. I was eating a lot of food. It was crazy. I was just like, I was listening to Dr. Sean Baker, the Carnivore Diet audiobook, and he was just like, I really remember. It's a shame it's not him reading that book actually, but that would have been great. But I remember, if you're hungry, just fire up another steak, and I was just firing up steaks all day long, burgers, lamb chops. It was crazy. So the first 2 weeks I included my favourite raw cheeses. I was obviously a bit knowledgeable about, raw and pasteurised dairy already. I like Comté, Gruyere, Parmigiano, Pecorino, and Roquefort as a blue cheese. So I was having all of these. I was having creme fraiche. I was having lamb mince and ribeyes and sirloins and lamb chops, and I think, not that I calculated anything, but I was eating 3 massive meals every day. Like, I think it was probably about 1.5 to 2 kilos of meat, depending on the day. And that continued, I think, for the next month. But after 2 weeks, I thought, okay, I'm going to ramp this up a step. And I decided to commit to the Lion diet after doing, just spending all my day researching the carnivore diet for the next 2 weeks. I was like, okay, maybe there's an even stronger lever to pull here. So I jumped into the Lion diet for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I gave up after 2 weeks. It is very restrictive, but I did noticeably feel even better on that. And it's just a variety. It's just like, oh my God, you can have eggs and cheese and butter. So I jumped back to a more varied carnivore diet after 2 weeks, and I've been there ever since. Now, it's been a long journey of discovery. The beauty of the carnivore diet is that you only really have to worry about 2 macros. So, to be honest with you, I didn't worry about anything for the next 6 months. I had no problem with my fat adaptation phase. I had a headache on the 5th day. I drank some very salty water, and it was fine. So the only issue that there's a few issues I've run into, but the only big one was after about 6 months of me consuming sort of readily what I think is probably the culprit is readily consuming cheese every day. Not every day, but I would balance it out a little bit, but there would be days where I'd consume quite a lot of cheese. And definitely think that led to weight gain. So I actually I've averaged 65 kilograms since I was running for the past 13 years. So somewhere between 63 and 67. When I was running, I was 59 kilograms, I'm nearly 6 foot. So that was very slim. Now I put on, let's say, 5 kilograms from 65. I'm 70. I'm still 70 now. There was definitely noticeable weight gain in the middle there. So I started to focus on the gym a bit more. I did more research into muscle hypertrophy and sort of time under tension. And I started to lift heavier for the first time in my life. I'd always lifted relatively heavy, but never focusing on getting heavier. Every week I was ramping up the weights. So I found this to be pretty effective, and I managed to recomposition the fat, not all of it, but the belly fat that I'd gained into my muscles. And a few people did actually comment that I am noticeably bigger. So I've maintained that for the last 6 months. I still have my cheeses occasionally. Don't go crazy. I'm currently eating salmon with a bit of creme fraiche quite regularly. I just brought that in. There was a long time where I pretty much ate ruminant animals only. In the first 6 months, I did eat quite a lot of pork. I ate pork chops and bacon sometimes. Kind of stopped eating so much pork. I just felt better with beef and lamb. But recently, I just thought maybe just try to optimize omega-3 status a little bit for brain health. Whether it's particularly noticeable, I can't say I'm noticeable, but I don't feel any worse by adding salmon. I'm probably having salmon 4 times a week. I'm still having beef and lamb every day. I stopped eating eggs so much for a while, about 4 or 5 months ago. I was just eating beef with quite a bit of butter and lamb. And I just sort of experimented with reducing my fats a little bit lately. So I'm using eggs as a kind of substitute for butter. A higher protein alternative to adding a lot of extra fat. I can't say I noticed any difference in my energy levels for at least the first 2 weeks of cutting my fat a bit. Now, I have recently noticed there are days where I just go, I need fat, and I just, I actually ate a whole pack of butter the other day, which is I've never done that before, never done that. So it's very intuitive, carnivore. It's been absolutely life-changing for me. I'm very fortunate that I managed to get sober beforehand, but I believe that this carnivore diet as a protocol for addiction recovery could be really, really profound. So, if I'd have found this way of eating or committed to this way of eating 5 years ago, it might well have just told my body, you don't need alcohol, because the thought of alcohol now, it absolutely repulses me. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I could probably have a glass of red in France or in Italy or something one day. I don't think it wouldn't make me turn back into an alcoholic, I don't think, but I don't feel like I need to. Beer, no way. I just crave water now. I am back on coffee. I had 3 months off coffee. I've actually got a really stunning Colombian single origin here in my pot. It's my little treat, coffee. I don't feel, some people get noticeable joint pain or DOMS after training when they bring coffee back on carnivore. I don't really notice that. I don't notice that it affects my body anywhere. It probably is. All of those plant toxins in there. Whether there is any benefit to the polyphenols for gut health, polyphenols are actually an anti-nutrient. So who knows with that one. But it is my little guilty pleasure. So that's where I'm at with my carnivore journey. Now, I'm 1 year carnivore in just over 2 weeks. So that's interesting. It's been a journey. Oh yes, what else? So I've been tracking my sleep for 4 years. I've had an Aura ring for 3 years, I think. And before that, it would have been on my Garmin, which is a bit old school technology. Now, obviously, my sleep score, the overall score, has declined over the past 3 years. But when you look at the metrics on my quality, the deep and REM, they've almost stayed the same, where I get around 1 to 2, let's say an hour and a half less sleep than I ever have done since tracking. So obviously the sleep score, the final score, is probably based on an average of 8 hours sleep. So now I'm only getting 6.5, but I'm still getting somewhere in the region of 1 hour to 2 hours of deep and REM per day. That varies, obviously. Sometimes the REM I've always been lower on the REM. Some people get a lot more REM, which is actually where you repair your mental health. So that, if I've been sleeping like that for my entire life, then that's probably why I'm my head is so mental. So I feel so, yeah. Sometimes it's great. Okay, so you get less sleep, the quality's better. But sometimes so I'm just being honest here. Sometimes I just feel like I didn't get enough sleep. So I've always favoured eating early, and there is good research to show that circadian eating when the sun is up is best, and it would make sense that you're more insulin sensitive in the morning and that you can handle more food for breakfast. So I think it's even Dr. Mark Hyman has said before, it's eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and dinner like a pauper. Which makes sense to me. Now, that's not to say that people don't get very good results with carnivore OMAD and eating a relatively large dinner as their only meal of the day. And I think that's a very valid approach, because particularly if you're a busy person, I think the mental clarity that you will get without having a big bolus of protein throughout the day is probably going to be pretty effective for your work life. And the fact that you didn't eat for the whole day and then you have a big meal, I think, can probably be helpful for some for a good night's sleep. So this is what I noticed with myself. If I don't eat something, it doesn't need to be massive, but if I don't eat something around 3 hours before bed, my sleep is too short. I wake up like a bullet in the night. So I have a small dinner, usually between 5 and 7 p.m. And make breakfast the biggest meal of the day, which is usually around 3 hours after I wake up. So that was what I found helped me get just the right amount of sleep. As I say, my quality has remained the same or even improved slightly, but I sleep much less. So that's the only real hurdle I've had to face with carnivore. Apart from that, my mental well-being is just a sigh of relief, and I'm very happy to be making this video, to be confident enough to do something like this without any fear or anxiety. The only time I experience anxiety is if I drink too much coffee without eating in the morning. Definitely. Now, if you drink coffee after you eat, I don't feel anything at all. But I do like to have a coffee before I eat, so I just try not to have too big a coffee before I eat. So that's part 2 of my story. This is where I am now. I hope you found that interesting, and subscribe and like and comment, and I'd love to reply to your comments. Thanks. Goodbye.